Hey, good afternoon, everybody. December the 15th. Today is another work session for our comprehensive rezoning, commercial, industrial, and employment campus districts. We're making our way through all the requests, and we're going to take another batch of them today. We won't be on the air until Thursday, so we just want to remind folks that are tuning in and wherever you're tuning in from to be mindful of the upcoming forecast. We're in the 10 to 14 inch area right now, and that could get very interesting because there's sleet and freezing rain that's going to come in the middle of this stuff, and that never helps. So that could get a little bit crazy. So, and we'll see what Thursday brings. I know Chris has been working on it, and since we're all virtual now, we probably will be able to do that unless you can't see out your windows with 10 or 14 inches of snow. I don't know. A little guy like me, 10 to 14 inches of snow, just saying. Anyway, yeah.
I can do a measurement of the snow live if you'd like. We can.
Okay.
I'm going to do some testing tonight, but I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. So we'll probably be business as usual, even though we may be in a different place here with the office building or whatever, for the safety of all of our employees and citizens. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Linda Eisenberg to lead the charge this afternoon, and we'll jump in with both feet as we move through some of these requests. So Linda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, commissioners. As Commissioner Wham said, today is our second work session with regard to the commercial industrial employment campus by request. And as promised, the properties today may offer a little more discussion. Many of the properties did have some comments to them from the surrounding community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start with the first property for introduction and discussion. So if the control room can please share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen? This is what I sent you yesterday.
Yep.
All right, very good. So again, I broke it down based on properties of similar characteristics as far as staff, planning commission, and a final recommendation, and the types and number of comments they had for the request. So the next three series of properties have a favorable staff and planning commission recommendation and are consistent with the plan for the area. There are some community comments in opposition, both written and oral, that were given at the listening session and public hearing. All written comments were provided to you all prior to today's meeting in the previous weeks. So the three first properties are 0024, which is Dana Kiker, 0001, which is ABAR, and that's also known as the Legacy School, and 0025, which is the Delaney properties that are both in Eldersburg. So the first one, the 0024 request, is from Ag to C2, commercial medium. Again, here's an aerial map, and this property is basically at the intersection of 97 and 32, just outside the Westminster growth area. To the north again is the YMCA, and then we have Robert Moten Elementary, and then the community college, high school as you move north up 32. I'm sorry, yes, 32. And then to Old Washington Road. So again, the future land use designation in the plan was agriculture. However, the staff and planning commission did find this property request consistent with the master plan because it is immediately outside the city of Westminster growth area boundary. It is located at the intersection of two urban roadways and is immediately outside existing water and sewer, which is directly to the north. The uses on the surrounding properties are institutional in use, Even though they have a conservation zone and a future land use as residential, they are in a type of institutional use. The property is 12 acres in size and does not abut land for ag purposes. And again, this request is consistent with the economic development goals and implementation strategies of the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan. So is there any other information that you would require? This is all that I have for this particular property.
Linda, just a question. The future land use you have to its west, suburban residential, as opposed to agricultural and conservation. Is that Westminster that is doing that?
So to the north, the suburban residential is the Westminster growth area boundaries, future land use, and that came out of the Westminster plan.
Has that been approved at this point by Westminster?
Oh, that was back in 2007, and then the county version was in 2009, and they're both consistent with one another.
Okay, so to be clear, then that is and should be considered suburban residential, correct?
To the north, yes.
To the north. Okay, thanks.
And Linda, this does have sewer to it now, sewer and water?
No, it does not. Sewer and water is found within the growth area boundary. The city of Westminster does not extend water and sewer service out of the growth area boundary, and they don't extend it outside of their actual corporate limits without what they call a good cause waiver.
But it's very close.
Correct. So just to the north of the property on the YMCA property, water and sewer come down on Old Washington Road. But C2 can develop without water and sewer.
So from what I remember, there was only really one negative comment, and I believe that was from across 32. Is that correct?
Correct. That was from a neighbor across 32 that thought they would be impacted by the commercial zoning of this property.
Okay, but even with that said, I mean, this does tie well within the properties to the what you're saying, the north or northwest, correct?
I believe so. You know, that corridor all the way up Old Washington Road is very developed. Either an institutional and then in medical office complexes and some retail and other offices all the way up into the city proper. And another case you saw was 844 Professional Center, which was, I believe, last meeting, and that request was to go to C2, but still have that suburban residential designation. Again, because we and the city of Westminster have not updated their plan in a very long time, and it's due.
Okay, and for the group, during the planning commission, some discussion really had to do with the aesthetics of developing that corner, you know, because it going northbound on 97, or excuse me, yeah, 97, it's still pretty open area, and it's not commercialized until you get way to the north towards 140. But the planning commission, I mean, that was the only real comments that I remember. And I think it was a unanimous favorable decision for them.
Yeah, and my concerns would also be the intersection, and they have completely redone that intersection there to make it much safer. And as a matter of fact, the statistics will show that the number of incidents that have occurred at that intersection since they've redone it have been, there have been a couple, but it's been certainly decreased by a large margin. So it's pretty wide open there, and I think that leads to this too. You know, I do understand that we got something from one neighbor. I get that, but because I do appreciate the comments from those folks. But it leads itself very well because Dick, you brought it up. Water and sewer are right there, And I think this is one that I don't really have a huge issue with. I mean, I think it's designed to do this 12 acres. So that's my 2 cents. Your district, Dennis.
Is it? Because that's not what it says, but I think it's an ideal location. It's right on the corner of two major roads. Going north is the Y, from there is the college, up from there, it's just developed basically all the way up. I think it's ideal. It's right on the edge of water and sewer. And if they're going to bring it in there, they have to petition the city to get water and sewer in there, and what the developer would have to pay for that extension and so forth. So that's up to them if they want to do it. But I do think it's the place to go. So I'll make the motion that we approve this rezoning.
Second.
Okay, and to remind everyone, these are placeholder decisions. So we're not set in stone yet. We're merely going case by case and making temporary, or I don't know what word we used last week. I can't remember, but
Provisional.
Provisional. Nicely done.
Better, but we use provisional.
Yeah. So provisional request. So just want to make sure that folks understand that as well as we continue to go through this process. All right. Any other discussion on this property? All those in favor? Okay, moving on. That's unanimous.
Hey, Steve, since you brought it up, it was discussed this morning as well in Planning Commission where we can find the decisions that are being made from the Directorate, the Planning Commission, and our provisional decisions. And Linda has a great spreadsheet that's located on her on the county webpage. We'll make a hot link to it from the front, so people can see the methodology and as we're walking through this. But it's a good point. Again, that transparency piece to make sure people can see every step of the way what we're doing in the decision-making process. Yeah, and that's the page. Thanks, Linda.
Absolutely. And we'll update this after today's meeting and also make an improvement to by actually putting the name of the property on the spreadsheet. So I will be reposting this in addition to the provisional votes that were taken today. So actually the next two requests, I'm going to actually go through both together because they really do go hand in hand, and it's almost one without the other would not quite make sense. So the next request was EC 1420200001. This is ABAR partnership, and the request is Ag to Employment Campus, and this is the Legacy School property. So again, coming off of Cleese Mill to the east off of Terrapin Drive. This parcel 504 is currently the Legacy School property. And you can see it in context of the greater employment campus area of the Delaney properties. So this request is consistent with the Freedom Plan and the Carroll County Master Plan, the future land use as expressed in the plan, its location in the Freedom designated growth area, its proximity to Maryland 26, and availability for future water and sewer. The water and sewer master plan have been updated to put these in the priority categories. The current use as a private school is consistent with the zoning designation as a primary principal use. There are very few environmental constraints on the Legacy School property. There's no violations, and the BZA did give a recent variance request, but it has no bearing on the future rezoning of the property. So both staff and Planning Commission gave this piece a favorable recommendation. So as I said, this goes hand in hand with EC 1420200025, which is a property owned by the Board of County Commissioners, formerly known as the Delaney property. This piece at one point in time was scheduled to be a potential future middle school site. However, in working with the Board of Education, there were no future needs when the designation was placed for additional middle school in this area, and the request is Ag to Employment Campus. So again, at the end of Terrapin Drive, adjacent to the Legacy School, are three parcels parcel 16, 484, and 490 that are all owned by the Board of Carroll County Commissioners and have an employment campus designation. The parcel 490 is directly across from Century High School and Linton Springs Elementary and does house the water tower for that area. The hatched line is the priority funding area designation. Should you make a decision to incorporate both the Legacy School and the Delaney properties, because they are on water and sewer and commercially based, we would petition the Maryland Department of Planning to also include these properties because they do meet the priority funding area requirements to be within the county designated priority funding area. So again, in context of the larger land use scenario, you can see how all three of these, or four of these, I'm sorry, tie into one another. The outlying properties were offered to come in with a change in rezoning to employment campus. They did not make application at this time, but their eligibility would still be at any time in the future. They would want to work with us to comprehensively rezone their parcels. We would work with them to do so. So that way you would have a contiguous block of employment campus. So again, this request is consistent with the Freedom Plan and the Master Plan. The future land use as expressed in the plan, and it's situated within the DGA and adjacency to the priority funding area and partially being in the PFA. Its proximity to water and sewer as well. And again, we just amended the water and sewer master plan to include these properties. There are some environmental constraints on the property, mainly being forest cover. We've worked with economic development. They've walked the site and do feel that it can be developed an employment campus because it's so large. So, you know, again, a property this large, it's been untouched, you do expect some undeveloped forest cover, but economic development is fully aware of that and still feels it's a viable candidate for employment campus. So again, staff and planning commission gave these series of properties in this request a favorable recommendation. So I'm going to go back to the Legacy School property to start with.
You know, to me, the Legacy School is a no-brainer. It's an opportunity for the Legacy School, which is, you know, busting at the seams right now as far as their occupancy. They do a great job for our community, teaching dyslexic kids and getting them mainstreamed into the school system. They looked at expansion of other locations and realized that it was cost prohibitive, and they rather keep it all in one place. So to me, they do have the, you know, the business plan to expand the school. It's 3.5 acres just to the east of where the main school is. So my recommendation is a favorable decision at this point.
If that's a motion, I would second that because I believe it. I mean, if you're looking at these properties and letting them put them all together, which makes sense. I think they all should be going in the same direction. And since we're starting with this one, I think this is the first one. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this.
Okay, Ed, are you talking just the Legacy School one, the 0001?
So yeah, I appreciate Steve. In total, you're talking about 120 acres. You got the IDA property, which is about 117 just to the east, but this parcel is about 3.5 acres to Legacy School. So I think we do need, because it's two separate requests, that we make decisions on each one, you know, as they stand by themselves. I appreciate Linda putting it together because you can see, you know, in its entirety, but we need to deal with this one first and then make a decision on the second one. And, you know, I can get into the second one in a second.
Okay, got it. So this is 0001, and this is the Legacy School, and this is the 3.5 acres or 3.8 or whatever it is. Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this one? In favor? Commissioner Weaver, opposed? Nope. You're in favor, Commissioner Weaver? Okay. All right, that's unanimous. All right, now, Ed, you want to do the
Yeah,
0025.
right. The second one is 117 acres, just across the street from Century High School and Lynn Springs. Jack has been working, our economic development team has been working it with the IDA. It's a prime location for an employment campus. The biggest, I think, challenge that we saw from residents, and Linda, if you make sure I'm correct, it had to do with some horse trails to the north. And was that this property?
I don't believe it was this property. It's another property we were talking about in planning commission, off of Linton, and Cherry Hill.
Okay.
So in the vicinity, but not on these properties. But there
Okay,
was
so it wasn't this property.
opposition, especially from some of the residents for both properties along Terrapin and Dixon.
Right, but it didn't have to do with the horses on this one,
No,
was it?
not.
Okay. Yeah, so again, I think, it's prime location. It needs a lot of work, needs the grading to be done. We have been putting, I believe, dirt there already because it is government property. So, it'll fit really well in to opportunities from the school. And we don't have much employment campus space, industrial space in this south part of the county anyway. So, my recommendation, we move forward and get the IDA to develop this property
I'll
as an
second.
employment campus.
Okay, got a motion and second on this piece too. Because it's in the general or the close proximity of Century and what'd you say, Linton Springs, Ed, I believe? Is that what you said? Yep.
Correct.
Infrastructure wise there, any concerns, or I would assume that area is probably in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, I believe it's well within the water service area, correct, Linda?
We expanded the and sewer service area. So again, that would be up to the developer, us being the county, to extend the actual sewer lines and water lines, but there is water and sewer capacity for the employment campus. That was something when we did the Freedom Plan, we said we would put forward a water and sewer master plan, and we did, and MDE approved that water and sewer priority areas in the 2019 triennial update.
Okay.
Just one question. What would it cost the county to get sewer and water extended to that area? I'm just looking down the road here. Do we have any idea
Well, I believe it's already
the
there.
economic impact?
If I could,
It's already right there.
if I could jump on it, whoever decides to develop this piece of property would pay for the extension of the water and sewer, not the county itself. We don't pay for that. They have the water and sewer in the area. You want to run the pipes or whatever, that's up to whoever develops that. Doesn't cost us anything.
Yes, but we still have to maintain the pumping stations and the other parts of this. And I'm just wondering, the whole impact of it, because we're at capacity in Freedom anyway, correct? Or just about on pumping stations.
So there is capacity. I don't have a cost figure of what it would cost to extend water and sewer, because we don't know what type of development would be and what the requirements would be for the infrastructure, how much line work would need to be run. So as Commissioner Frazier said, whoever ends up ultimately developing this property would bring that infrastructure to the site.
Well, some of it, I'm just worried about this and our cost to us in the long run. I'm in favor of doing this here. This is a spot the school system said no, they don't want a middle school in there. They've said that for a couple of years now. They're not going to develop anything. It's a perfect employment campus. So I'm not opposed to it. I was just wondering what it's going to cost us down the road to do it.
Yeah, I would think that's probably going to be a tough figure to get, because, keeping in mind what Dennis brought up, whoever would put whatever in there would be responsible for that. And then to say what it would be due to the capacity on our pumping stations and lines or what have you. I mean, one way to look at it, all the lines would be new, so there wouldn't be an issue there. But sure, there would probably be something down the road with the pumping station. But man, that's a ways out. I'm not sure how you'd even get some sort of a number there.
And I know that, they're not free. We put, I know the contractor has to put it in, but there are the offset costs to the county, and down the road, it continues to cost us. So that's where I'm worried about things 10 years from now, not presently.
Right.
No, Dick, I think that's fair, and it actually ties into actually a very good op-ed done by Joanne Grundy this morning in the paper. She has definitely gone through challenges in the Freedom area, but what she was describing is for us to ensure that we're working through the considerations of existing priority and long-term sewer, in the Freedom area. And to be very clear, if it's existing, if it's priority, or if it's long-term, and what does that mean to the developer, both residential and commercial. It is difficult, but we got to ensure that we do make very deliberate, decisions when we consider the priority and long-term sewer. So if you haven't read the article or the op-ed, recommend you do. And Linda, definitely want you to take a hard look at that op-ed, and let's have a conversation offline more about it, okay? Dealing with the Freedom area. So.
All right, so I've got a motion and second to move forward with this one. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All right, those two were unanimous. So we move to number 4, I guess. Linda?
So C20920200014. This is MAD Properties. The request is Ag to C2. This property is located just outside the Winfield Rural Villages, so to the west of that. It is 2 parcels that make up this request, and they're situated off of Old Liberty Road. So here's a picture of what the 2 parcels look like. They're 2 structures that are in disrepair and definitely in need of some improvements. The applicant thought that having the commercial designation on these 1.69 acres would help them be able to improve these longstanding buildings and former businesses into this area. As you can see, here's the Winfield Rural Villages, which is in the hatched pattern of yellow for residential rural village and pink for village commercial industrial, but this is in the ag area. So staff, the reason this was separated from the other properties is because staff gave this an unfavorable recommendation and Planning Commission gave it a favorable recommendation. The reasoning for staff giving an unfavorable recommendation was because it did not have a commercial future land use designation as articulated in the plan and was not consistent with the plan. However, Planning Commission reviewed the property and did establish consistency and made a motion within their favorable recommendation that it is consistent with the 2014 as amended 2019 Carroll County Master Plan.
I went out and met with the owner of this property out there, and I was very much impressed with their initiative to want to try to upgrade the property. This piece of property has been used for commercial use before 1965. Like Linda mentioned earlier, the buildings are in disarray. I think these property owners in this situation are faced with the difficulty of getting a financing, and they have a heartfelt desire to upgrade their properties, get the financing, and bring it all into the modern standard. So I very much would like this to move forward and get the redesignation. So I'm gonna motion that we move forward and make this C2 provisionally.
When we had the discussions about the definitions of commercial industrial, one of the conversations I remember having was dealing with commercial, small commercial C1, that not all C1 was alike in different areas. So C1 in, Eldersburg would be very different than C1 in a rural area and needs. And this may be somewhat of the same situation where a commercial, although it's surrounded by complete ag, a commercial need is there, whereas it wouldn't be as needed in a large developed ag area in, another part of the county. Is that kind of where we're at with this? I mean, what is the commercial being used there now? What are the stores?
They have a catering business in the one building and a tow company in the other. And the property's sitting on a hillside. I don't think there's any real way for anyone to use it for ag. This property, even if it got vacated, I don't think anyone would use it for agricultural use. So I think it's a very good spot for a commercial place to be in conformity. Plus, out there in Winfield, there's no municipal water and sewer. They could never get hooked up. It's just not there. They'll all be on well and septic no matter what. But I really would like to see some investment and improvement, especially in that Winfield area. And I think this would be a prime opportunity to do that.
Could the type of commercial use there now, could it fit underneath C1?
Yes, that's what I was just looking into. You read my mind. So the catering does fit into as a primary principal use. Mary, I'm having a hard time finding the towing business. Do you see that in here? I can't remember how we listed it.
Towing service would be prohibited. But actually, towing service is prohibited in the C1 and C2.
I'd say I'm not in favor of this. It's right in the middle of all the agricultural land. They can, if I'm wrong, Linda, let me know, but I'm pretty sure they can continue on what they're doing as a non-conforming use, as long as they keep using it. If they want to make improvements to the building, they're allowed to do that. I'm not in favor of changing this to C1 or C2 because of where it's located and what's around it.
So the tavern
But if
conforming, I have to double check on the tow. I'm not sure the tow.
if they want to make improvements, they need the zoning, I guess, for a bank loan or anything to do that at the present time, correct? I'm sure they're not, bank is not going to let them have funds on a non-traditional use at that point.
Well,
Definitely helps.
I would think that'd be up to the bank, though. I mean, they put buildings on this land already, and it's non-conforming use. I don't see. I mean, it's up to the bank. It's up to what they want to do. Would it be easier? I guess it would be, but I don't think that's a reason to change the zoning.
These buildings are pre-1965.
But if we look at a consistency, as shared before, of definitions, this does, lend itself to at least allow a C1 designation. I don't know if we did that, if that would hurt the towing service that's there now, if we change that designation. Or would they still be allowed to just operate as they've been operating?
I think they would still be considered a non-conforming use either way, but as I said before, even if you gave them C2, they'd be a non-conforming use because towing isn't allowed in either of those districts. The other thing about C1 is retail and service is limited to 10,000 square feet or less. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on in those several buildings, but anything that would be considered general retail or general service would be limited to 10,000 square feet.
So we don't know how big these buildings are right now.
No, I don't think we do. There's several different buildings. Linda, I don't think we have actual dimensions of these buildings.
Yeah, hold on, give me a second. I can get that for you real quickly.
But it kind
You
of
could
throws out.
potentially put them out of business
For the
by
bank, because-
changing the zone, correct? Sorry, Dennis?
go ahead, Commissioner
I said,
Weaver.
we could potentially put these guys out of business by changing the zoning.
Well, it would still be a non-conforming use. It's non-conforming now. If it changes to C1 or C2, it's still non-conforming. So that kind of throws out the argument about getting a bank loan would be easier to fix these buildings up because it makes no difference.
Yes, it does. Banks will not loan to non-conforming use very, very easily.
That's my
Right.
point. It's non-conforming regardless of what it is. It's still non-conforming. That is exactly my point, Commissioner Weaver. Thank you.
Correct, at least with the towing, but not necessarily with the catering. And to upgrade the catering, if it's conforming within C1, then that would fit.
I'd like to state that the property owner is the catering business. They have an overwhelming majority of the lot filled with their stuff. I think there's just a building down on the front that someone has a tow truck at and they towed. I think that just might be some sort of sublet and it's not a primary. And I don't think that's the primary concern of this owner. Their concern is their catering business. That's their bread and butter. And I think if the towing business was non-conforming and had to go, I don't think they'd have a problem with that. They might actually be able to consume all that lot if they can invest and expand in their primary business, the catering business. So once again, I'm going to motion provisionally for us to go C2 on this.
So the one property, the 1835 is 6,400 square feet of above ground area.
Okay, so that fits
Check on the other one.
within the C1 allowances. The non-conforming use of the towing that's kind of regardless. If we put it into C1, we allow them to continue and conform their business, banking and whatever else is necessary. And it's in line with the definitions that we created when it came to, C1 early on. I mean, Dennis, what do you think?
I like C1 better than C2, to be frank, although I'm still not 100% sold on it. But if we want to make that change, wouldn't we go back to the property owner first and ask if they wanted to make the change from C2 to C1? Maybe they had a different idea in mind. And Commissioner Boucher, to your point, when we change the zoning, if we change the zoning, it's not just for this property owner. It's for whoever has the property in 50 years down the road and what they can do with it. So it's good that we know the intention of the property owner, but it really doesn't make any difference because we're changing the zoning for now and in the future.
Although he's been there for 70 years or 65 years. I mean, it's been a long time. Yeah, Eric, I think if we change this and we kept, and in line with what you want, moving into commercial, but moving into C1 as a provisional decision, going back, finding what other uses this gentleman may be interested in. If it may just be expansion or further development, and that'll fit nicely within the C1, zoning. And it would be consistent with the decisions we've been making. That's the key here, is to maintain as much consistency as we can.
I have not heard any complaints out of any of my constituents. Ms. Eisenberg, what do we have on record as far as neighboring complaints? Nothing?
We have no negative comments on this property. And just to let you know, the other built structure is 1,600 square feet, so well within the 10,000 square foot maximum. And we are more than happy to reach out to their council, which is represented by Clark Schaefer, and ask him if the C1 would also meet their intent and come back too. So we can do a provisional and then we can reach out, and then when we readdress it again, I can let you know.
Yeah, I'm in favor of let's talk to them before we make the change and make sure they're aware of it and comfortable with where we want to go. We can just put it on hold for a period of time until we at least talk to the landowner.
Or Mr. Schaefer.
All right, so I get a sense you want to put this one on hold and not go with either C1 or 2 until you've checked with the property owners. Is that right? We'll put this in the next mix.
I can live with that.
Okay.
I'd be more comfortable with that because if we go through the motion of making a C1 and maybe C1's not what they wanted anyway because they had different plans, then we wasted our time. Let's see what they want first. If they want C1, I'd be much more inclined to go to C1 and C2. That's just my opinion though.
Yep,
Okay.
and I agree with you as well. So, yeah, Linda and Eric, if you kind of follow up, that'd be great.
All right.
All about.
Yep. Okay. This one's on hold for possible change to C1. Okay. Next up, Linda.
The next one is C2 0320200020 97 Crab Pass LLC. The request is ag to C2. This property is located off of 97. This is known as the Maryland Mallet. And the future land use designation is agriculture. Staff gave this an unfavorable recommendation because it is not consistent with the 2019 as amended master plan. And it's not consistent with the land use designation or the goals for the area. Although the property is not an ag use, it is a legally operating non-conforming commercial use and may continue as such. The Planning Commission gave this a favorable recommendation and actually found consistency with the master plan and forwarded to for a C2 recommendation. There are some surrounding community comments that were given both verbally at our listening session and at the public hearing, as well as written comments submitted regarding moving this property beyond its current ag designation.
So I know you said we got some comments. I don't think we got many. We only got one, didn't we?
No, I think just a few, and there's some neighbors that are, I think the adjacent neighbors that are of particular concern for this becoming more than what it currently is. And they feel with the C2 designation, they can expand beyond a restaurant and can do any of the C2 uses, which is very fair to say. And they thought they loved the restaurant, but didn't want to see it expand beyond being just that. That was essentially their comment.
Okay. While I appreciate that comment, this is acreage wise doesn't lead to doing hardly anything here at all. It's landlocked, and I did meet with the owners, and one of their biggest concerns is what you guys talked about on the last property. They want to spend money to improve their area there. There's a retaining wall that they'd like to put in. They'd like to build a big crab deck on it, but they're not going to do it if they aren't zoned correctly, and they can't get the money, according to the owners, unless they do have the right zoning. So there is no sense at all, I don't think, that there would ever be anything here other than a restaurant. And the years that I've grown up here, it's never been anything but a restaurant. It's always been a restaurant, and I can't imagine it turning into something that, first of all, the stormwater management and the septic and all that, I don't even know what else they'd be able to do there other than a restaurant. So I feel for the owners because they're sort of in limbo because they can't spend the money. And they kind of quite frankly looked at me and said, you know, if we don't get this, we're not going to improve the property for our restaurant, especially in these troubling times that they're in anyway up there. So it is my intent to reach out. I know most of the neighbors up there to explain the position that we are in here, but I think we truly need to make this what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's other properties that we're gonna dive into that are gonna be in the same situation, kind of like what Commissioner Boucher, you shared, a few minutes ago. And we have some coming up. Same question as the last. Can the restaurant that's existing there now exist in a C1 zone property?
Well, yes, they can. However, my understanding is that the drive-through portion may be something that they're seeking. So drive-throughs are prohibited in C1. But yes, a catering, banquet hall, restaurant, and tavern are our primary principal uses. But the drive-through is strictly prohibited. So they couldn't even get a conditional from BZA.
Okay.
If this is our C1 or C2, doesn't it say something in there about accessibility of the neighborhood, being able to walk up or ride a bike up or something like that to the existing property where this is located? That would be impossible. And I mean, I could bike out there, but most people wouldn't bike that far. But if that's what it says in the zoning, and I think it does, I'm sure Mary's checking it right now. Then it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit what our zoning category is.
Commissioner Frazier, you're a wet blanket today.
That bikeable, walkable, reserved for the C1 community and C2. Again, we're trying to incorporate that wherever it makes sense, but in some cases it just doesn't. And we only have 3 commercial districts. So we're trying to do a lot with 3 districts too, so.
For the record, here,
Is the drive-through prohibited or is it conditional in C1?
Prohibited. So it is not allowed. They cannot go to the BZA for a conditional approval.
How long has this restaurant been there?
I think
Forever.
George Washington perhaps may have slept in the dining area in the front of the building.
So in other words, when Commissioner Weaver was about 30 or 40.
Yeah, somewhere along those lines. Yeah, it's changed hands a couple times, but ever since I've lived out there, it's always been a restaurant, always, and there's no intent to do anything else with it. And for the record, I can't imagine anybody in their right mind that would want to take a bicycle on 97 anywhere.
I agree with you on that one too. This ground is not agricultural, obviously. It's a wooded area. It's at just a corner there. They are landlocked. To keep a restaurant in there, they want to make improvements and they have to upgrade. They need the zoning in order to do that. And where it's located, you look at the whole thing, it makes sense to keep it the way it is with that C2 and allow them to invest in the property. And, it's isolated. And here again, I don't think I've ever seen a bicycle even around that place, but never know. Maybe a motorcycle, but a bicycle, I don't know.
Need some Harleys up there. All these small businesses are really hurting, and I must emphasize it now more than ever. I think we as commissioners should try to help these little guys out, and part of this rezoning would really give them a boost up and help them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but we gotta be looking at long-term, what is best for Carroll County. The tactical situation, I 100% agree. And you're right, it's tearing us apart because we want to keep these businesses afloat. But we also want to conform to the rules that we're putting in place. And this is a tough one, because I want to get to yes, on this. It's just I want to be sure that we are conforming to the decision we're making, or we take a look at the decision we've made on how we define them And did we define them the best way, or should we reopen that and relook at that as well? And that's fine too. But yeah, this is.
Why did the planning commission have a favorable recommendation to this?
In the same sense, I would expect, Linda, is that there's no better use for this than what's there now, and it is,
Agreed.
although it's owned ag, there's no ag value on that piece of property. So why not let it be, because it's there, and let them get the funding, and it's best for the community. But again, it's not that it's short-sighted, but we're making exceptions to the laws that we're putting in place, or the definitions that we've been put in place. And that's where we just have to, be very deliberate on how we're doing it.
Mr. Wayne, you want to make the motion?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure where you're going with that conversation, Ed. I can see part of it there, but for me, it comes down to common sense. This is not ag property, and and I will say, I got a sense that if they weren't able to get the right zoning here, that this has the potential of not being anything and sitting empty. So I'm concerned about that as well. I'm a believer in calling these operations what they are. There's no barn here, with all due respect, and I understand what a couple of the citizens said, because they feel as if it's got the potential with C2 to put other stuff there. But again, I will advise that I don't think that's ever going to happen in my lifetime, because you can't do anything else with the property. It's not big enough. And you couldn't do anything even with stormwater and everything else that comes into play. There's nothing else that could go there. It's a restaurant, and that's what it is. Why not call it what it is? So I'm going to provisionally make the motion that we allow for C2 here. And I'll stop there.
I'll second it as long as Commissioner Frazier doesn't open a bike shop up there.
All right, okay, 2 comments. Call it what it is, it's not conforming. And my thing about the bike was, in our zoning where we're talking about C2, it says you should be able to get to the C2 on the bike or walking. That's why I brought that up. That's what I'm pretty sure it says that in our text. That's why I brought that up. I understand what everyone's saying about helping out the person, and probably nothing else is going to go there. I understand completely.
Can you get to it with a bicycle and walking?
Anything's
Get to it with
possible.
a car?
I'll tell you, this is going to be in line with a couple other properties that we're going to be dealing with. And if we're going down this, trend, which I do not disagree, I just want to make sure that we're showing some consistency as we move forward. So, okay.
There is also the slight potential here. I'll emphasize slight, that if this is zoned what it is, that the state highway may come in to assist with some safety enhancements to that particular area. There have been some accidents there, and it's as a result of pulling out of that. And well, some of it's been it's a result of pulling out of there, but it's also the result of people going 110 mile an hour in a 45 mile zone. So there's that too. But there is the potential that could occur as well. And that was brought up in the meeting that I had up there. If it's non-conforming and it's a piece of ag property, the state's really not interested in enhancing it if it's not going to be there. That was the key there. So, all right. I got a motion and second on this one. Any other discussion? All in favor? I got 4 and opposed. Okay. 4-1 on that one provisionally. Linda?
Okay, the next property, is C10420200007. Playtime Corporation. The request is add to C1. The property is located off of Old Westminster Pike. However, it does have frontage on the Maryland 140, but there is no access. Access comes from a long driveway off Old Westminster Pike and is behind existing residential housing. So again, the future land use future land use is ag as it is for the surrounding community on the south side of Maryland 140. The property is in the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan with the future land use designation as ag, and this request is not consistent with that recommendation, or with that land use. It is also inconsistent with the master plan for 2 other reasons. I apologize, I'm lost my train of thought. And it's in the Patapsco Rural Legacy area. Although the property is not currently in ag use, it is a legally operating commercial use as permitted in 15807D of the county code. That allows for this type of daycare facility to be allowed in the ag district. Changing this property from ag to C1 would allow all the additional commercial uses in the C1 zone that were not envisioned by the 2014 master plan with its 2019 amendment. Both staff and planning commission gave this an unfavorable recommendation, and there were comments from the surrounding community, especially the neighbors. I'm going to go to this, and especially the neighbors to the front of this property, seeing this to be bigger than a C1 or C2 use with the daycare center already there.
This is definitely an interesting property. It's not much area there to do anything really, other than what they're doing with it. It slopes off right into 140, and no sewer and water, small little sliver up through there. I'm not sure what to do with it here at the present time, but I can't see any change. I mean, with everybody saying unfavorable, I kind of agree with them. This is a very difficult thing to change.
I mean, there's no real reason to change this piece of property. I mean, is there? The childcare is allowed in the ag.
It's a primary use. There's no
Right.
they don't have that obstacle.
Right, and everything in its surrounding, there's no C1, it's all ag on that side, and all heavy commercial or medium commercial C2, 3 on the other side. So yeah, it just does not conform to anything in the surrounding areas.
With that, I'm going to move that we have provisional non-acceptance. Leave it as ag.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and second to leave it the way, turn this request down and leave it the way it is provisionally. I'll agree with you, Dick. I can tell you, if this property was in a better formation there, I might be okay to move, but this is a weird place to sit, and it's behind a lot of residents, and I'm just not in favor of changing it. So that's where I am with that one. So any other discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor of turning this one down? And that's unanimous. Okay, moving on, Linda.
All right, the next property is I-209-2020-0018 Melvin Laney. The request, it is a split zone property currently of ag and conservation, and the request is to go to I-2 heavy industrial. So again, this property, here's an aerial image, is off of Salem Bottom Road, and it's currently used for contractor equipment storage. The property has many environmental constraints on it currently. and has a water resources protection easement. Though wetlands are not found on the property, wetlands are on the adjacent property to the north. Also, there are steep slopes and forest cover along the whole southern western portion of the property itself. Also, just to note, the floodplain easement is not on this property, but again, there is floodplain to the north of this property. The future land use in the 2018 master plan is all resource conservation, though it's currently split zoned ag and conservation. Both Planning Commission and staff gave this an unfavorable recommendation for I2. The property is designated, as I said, in resource conservation. This designation is reserved for properties with natural or environmental resources as it articulated. The I2 district is intended to provide for locations for activities characterized by heavy manufacturing, refining, processing, or compounding of materials or products predominantly from raw materials. So again, the intent of the I2 is for heavy industry that would also potentially create strong odors, loud noises, some type of dust, vibration, smoke, vapors, light pollution, etc. It is intended that properties in this district be located with access to major thoroughfares or other major modes of transportation, and this is located off a county road. The permitted I2 uses are the most intense of all the zoning districts and would not generally be compatible with residential or agricultural uses on the surrounding properties. The property has frontage on Salem Bottom, which is a rural minor collector road, which would not be considered, as I said, a major thoroughfare. However, we have not received any oppositions from the community regarding this request.
All right, for full disclosure, I'm personal friends with Mel Laney, and I told him that I'll support this, but I have to recuse myself from voting on it. I'm very much familiar with this property. They wish to be able to store more of their industrial equipment there during off season and do some maintenance on it. Right now, they have a couple of old buildings, and it's the same predicament some of these other property owners have that are non-conforming. They'd like to level those old buildings, put a new maintenance building in there so that during the off season, when their equipment's sitting in storage, they can do some maintenance on it. That property is severely restricted on how much you can and cannot do with it. The backside's a real heavy slope. The bottom feeds into a stream, but it would be an ideal place to store equipment and do some maintenance. I support this, but I was wondering if there can be a compromise like Commissioner Rothstein was offering earlier from C2 to C1. Would there be a potential compromise, a light impact to make it I1 instead of I2? Would I1 still allow them to store equipment there if that was a compromise?
Yes, it would.
Well,
The I1 would allow that.
all right. Well, I like the motion that it be accepted provisionally. It's I1, but I'm going to recuse myself from voting on this.
Well, this is another one. If we're going to go back and see if it's going to be I1 instead of I2, we should go to the property owner, see if that's what they're comfortable with before we even waste time voting and talking about it. Not waste time, but, talk about it that way, if that's what you want to do. If you're looking at I2, it doesn't fit any parameters for I2 to go in this particular spot, so I would be totally against going I2. I know that doesn't surprise anybody, but I would be. Just our definitions and where it should be located and what's around it, it doesn't fit at all. So I'd be totally against that. If you want to take it back to the property owner and ask them if they want to go I1, I'd have to see what I1 is and where it should be before I could say yes or no to that, because I haven't looked at it for this particular property.
Yeah, Dennis, I agree. We should go back to the property owner to see if I1 does meet their needs. The other piece is, instead of looking at the entire piece of property, is there a piece of this property that they want to be rezoned? Because there is so much limitations on this property that, I don't see why we would want to try to rezone the entire piece of property, but if there's a portion of it, that they're looking at rezoning, that would be something, that could be considered. There's just not a lot to do on the property,
That's a real good point, but even if it was rezoned, they'd have to bring the the plan site for the county, and the county would severely restrict where they can put it anyway. I think what you're getting at would be taken care of by the planning commission, like that slope behind it and the waterways in the bottom. They couldn't do anything on that anyway, even if they submitted a request. I'll
Right.
contact the owner and Clark Schaefer, and I'll get the information back to you as well on the change there from I-2 to I-1.
I agree. Talk to the property owner and even the parcel zoning. Eric may come in here. It's 11-acre parcel. If they would take 5.5 acres or half of it and rezone as I-1, maybe that would be all they need at this point, and keep everything going and yet not deal with the environmental issues.
Okay, so we got two possibilities here, partial and then I-2 to I-1. So if we can get the information on that, I take it we're on hold with this one as well for additional information. Correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that last statement, Commissioner Wance. If I may suggest that staff reach out to the applicant to determine whether they're interested in making any amendments to their application, whether it's by size of the area or the type of zoning, rather than one of the commissioners. That would be, I think, appropriate.
Keep it
Yeah, I
up
think
there.
we-
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that one. That we should let staff, in all these, let staff take care of the inquiries when we want to have a possibility of a change. Okay. All right, this one's on hold then, and for more information, and next one up.
So the next property is C20420200019, Gems Investment LLC. The request is conservation to C2. The property is located in the Finksburg area, just to the west of the bridge coming over from Baltimore County over the Liberty Reservoir. It is in the Finksburg plan. The property is this whole entire peninsula between Old Westminster Pike and Baltimore Boulevard. However, the applicant put in a request to limit the request from the entire parcel to the blue outlined portion above, which is the more viable piece of the property. This property is severely constrained by environmental resources, forest cover, steep slopes, as well as streams, and is the headwater to one stream that flows directly into the Liberty Reservoir itself. The future land use in the in the Finksburg plan is conservation. And we also answered a question for Commissioner Frazier that he had at a prior meeting with regard to the parcel that is directly across the street. Part of Planning Commission's rationale for the favorable recommendation for C2 was looking at the property directly across the street, Baltimore Boulevard or Maryland 140. So the zoning history of that parcel, which is map 59 parcel 180, and is approximately 4.62 acres of the C2. So in 1965, that entire property to the north was conservation zoning. In the 1981 Finksburg Area Environs Plan, it was still private conservation. So we had two land use designations at that time for conservation. Private conservation, meaning it was privately held, and public conservation, which was a public, either institutional or some type of resource use for conservation. Then dating back to 1982, there was a piecemeal rezoning. So that's the type of rezoning where you need to show change or mistake. And the request went from conservation to industrial light at that time, which was our former IR district. Then another, and that was denied. Then again in 1990, there was another request for the same type of rezoning, and that was approved then in 1991 with a map amendment. Finally, though, in the 2013 Finksburg Corridor Plan and subsequent comprehensive rezoning, that particular piece, again, we're talking about the piece to the north, went from IR to BG or business general. And it has been business general since our most recent comprehensive rezoning to move properties out of the former BNR and BG districts to the current C1, C2, and C3 districts, and it was rezoned to C2 in 2019. So that is the history of why that particular piece to the north is in the commercial district, but it was original intent was for conservation. And that's the only new information I have on this site. So again, staff gave this an unfavorable recommendation as C2 commercial medium because it is inconsistent with recommendations of the Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. Environmental constraints on the property, such as forest cover, steep slopes, and streams. And the request poses significant adverse effect on the Liberty Reservoir, as well as the Reservoir Technical Group did give unfavorable comment for this particular rezoning request, as well as the surrounding community on Old Westminster Pike did give the oral and written comments regarding the change in the rezoning. However, Planning Commission did give a favorable recommendation and did make it consistent with the Finksburg plan because it is located in the Finksburg designated growth area. It is located on Maryland 140 and is requested and is consistent with the rezoning that I just described to the north on Maryland 140 and gives the same environmental buffer. And environmental concerns will be addressed during the site plan review. So Planning Commission did forward this request to you with a favorable recommendation.
This is, again, interesting property to look at. I think if you look at the map, the top portion is the old Patapsco mine. That's what they're talking about being able to do something with, and I'm not sure what lies underneath. That's, of course, not our issue. But the lower portion of this is major conservation, I would think, and with the reservoir lying right at the base of that, it's very interesting what we can do with it. I've been thinking about this one, and you know, the reservoir right there, but here again, with a portion, they can't use the lower portion of this. It would only be the top portion if they went with anything. Could we limit the rezoning only to, you know, you have it there. How many acres is that, Linda? That blue portion?
The blue portion. Hold on, I'm in the wrong place in my book. Keep talking, I'll get it for you.
You know, any more than that, this really is on the edge.
In my notes, I have that down as 4 acres of what you're talking about, Commissioner Weaver. I don't know if that's exactly right, but I wrote down 4 acres for that portion.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like 4.5 acres. And that's what the Planning Commission was determining as well, because it would be in line with the commercial on the other side of Baltimore Pike. And it's far enough away from the reservoir for any concerns. And plus, like Commissioner Boucher said, any development that's going to be made will be going through the Planning Commission regardless to make sure that it meets the appropriate requirements. So I like what the Planning Commission did very deliberately in taking a look at this piece of property, which kind of gives that compromise approach as well.
Yeah, I know they're going to have a stormwater management. Will give them another way to look at this, I'm sure, when they get into it. But I'll move we provisionally accept the blue portion at C2.
Second.
My concern with this, I do have a concern, is that there's no planned water or sewer service in this area. Therefore, it's going to be well and septic, and it's very close to the reservoir. That's my concern with this particular piece of property. That's all of our drinking water, basically. It's right there. There's no, if it had water and sewer going to it, I'd be like, yes, it's ideal. I don't have any problems with it. But because it doesn't have water and sewer, there's nothing planned for there. That's my real concern about this property. even though they're only going to use the 4 acres instead of the bottom part. Stuff still migrates. It really does. That's my worry. And I know we go through some land, but I just want to bring that up.
That's a very good concern, especially in this area. There's a lot of septic issues just north of here. In fact, this whole area, I think, has been downsized as far as growth area. What, the 1 square mile, Linda, I believe, if I'm right, 625 acres or something. They really have downsized the Finksburg growth area, and a lot of it's due to sewer and water. The time that gets down here, maybe 100 years from now, if we're lucky, for that. So that is a major concern. And I agree with you. This would probably be the last parcel in this area that anything will be done with. I would think in this area, you can't get that close to the reservoir and expect people in Eldersburg and Freedom to be drinking the water. So
My concern, I go with that concern. My concern is also with access to this piece of property. I can't imagine that the State Highway Administration is going to allow any access off of 140 for anything additional. That's a bad place right down through there. We got a lot of accidents in there. So that means that then it would only be accessed off of Old Westminster Pike, which would put an access and entrance past a lot of residential areas. And I bet there's going to be a lot of yelling about that, because that's not the best place. And that intersection of Old Westminster Road, or whatever it is, Old Westminster Road and 140, I can't imagine that the state highway is still allowing people to turn left or right onto that, actually, because that's a terrible spot. So I've got a real concern with highway safety issues throughout there and access to the property, in addition to the water and sewer. And Dick, I remembered you talking about the water and sewer issues down there in Finksburg, where a lot of the septic systems are failing. I'm not sure what these folks are going to be able to do. And it's on a hill and it all goes downhill. You know, a plumber once told me about what happens downhill. Just saying.
water flows downhill.
I thought politicians go downhill.
Thank you, Mr. Wentz. I never thought about the access on and off. I'm glad you're here, because you always had that safety aspect to bring up. Because I was very concerned about the water and sewer, and that was where I was sitting on. But you know, bringing up the access as well, it's a very good point.
Yes, you don't make a left on that road if you're coming north from 3 o'clock on, or in the morning anytime. You might in the middle of the day, but any other time you're taking your life in your hands. Old Westminster Road is not a heavily traveled road. That's the only good thing about it, but it's a paved cow path.
It is a very good point. And unfortunately, the arguments we've been hearing have been, well, we're not going to look at the traffic until something's zoned, until there's a developer wanting to develop. And again, that's where I've shared, I feel like it's asked backwards in so many ways when we do things like this. And we're going to be hitting the same thing with the residential properties, you know, because of the increased traffic. Therefore, do we put into consideration the traffic, the existing water and sewer, while we're trying to rezone something? Or do we allow the developer to say, okay, now that's rezoned, you figure it out? That's the challenge, you know, that we're put in front of. So I don't know, Steve.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ed. I'm right there with you on that one. I think this one might be a little bit different, because going back to what I originally said with the State Highway Administration, this would be something I think that they would go, you're not getting access there. So then that would lead us to not being able to do anything ourselves. So when it comes to residential properties, Ed, and some of the things that we would be allowed to do, those are things that we quite possibly could do ourselves without the intervention of the state highway. So I think this is maybe a tad different, but yet the same? If I don't know, 6 of one, half does the other. Those, but I just think this is not the best place, and I think to protect that reservoir, that, by the way, should be ours. Just putting that out there again. I know that ship has sailed. I got it, but
Way too late.
yeah, I know. But I just think anything beyond what is already there is encroaching on some serious issues down there. So I'm against this one for all those reasons.
Is the property to the west, that zone commercial, is it occupied right now? And is there
Yes.
access?
Storage facility. And to your point, Commissioner Ronstein, had this property been designated in the Fingsburg plan as commercial, there would have been some preliminary discussion at that time with State Highway, as we do with all of our planning process. We do look at traffic. So we may not do an in-depth study like we would a traffic study when a project is coming to development review, because again, it's like a funnel. You have the more wider general stuff at the planning level, but then at the site plan, it's much more narrowly focused. And so then State Highway has a plan to actually, a site plan to actually respond to. So this was not part of any planning process. This is a request from the property owner during this open by request phase for this. So I think to Commissioner Wance's point, you know, State Highway, honestly, other than what we vetted through this process, was not vetted through a planning process to make this commercial at this particular location.
You know, this is not I agree with you. This is, well, first of all, State Highway is not going to let us deal with it. There's a lot of issues here. I don't know why anybody want to go C2 on this site, to tell you the truth, but you know, I'm torn myself on this, what we do with it. And this is a lot due to traffic, a lot of due to environmental concerns, the reservoir being right there. Depends what they intend to do with it. It could be major. And Ed, I think you're right. This is one we should have the horse in front of the cart doing it. Instead of after, which like we've been doing it. But, you know, if you can't do it, why would you? Maybe we shouldn't give the zoning to it at this point. May have jumped the gun there. Steve, you have a valid point. Very good point on this.
So you got a motion on the table, Dick. Nobody seconded yet, I don't think.
How about if I withdraw that motion?
Did you second it, Eric?
You
You
did.
did? Okay, sorry. I lost track. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm just a little bit confused where you have, looking at the map, that's commercial across the street. It's commercial on the same side of the street. There's what, a mini storage next door to it? I mean, why wouldn't we approve someone putting a mini storage in this lot? How would it be any different? I just want to be consistent by looking at that map with all that red. How is it inconsistent to turn this lot into red as well? If it was commercial and someone put in a plan, once again, that plan would have to go through all the review approval. And if it doesn't meet the traffic requirements, there's all kinds of things in the process that could stop it if it doesn't work. But I think at the very least, we should set it up for the zoning, and then whoever owns it can go through the process and we can filter out in that process.
Well, we need topography lines. It gets very steep in there. I think to see what we're talking about.
Right, but as Commissioner Boucher, you know, shared, I absolutely agree. You know, let the property owner have the opportunity to figure out how he or she wants it developed. We're already taking a portion of it because it is too close to the reservoir, and we don't agree with that. It is in line with the commercial on both sides of the highway. I understand the traffic concern, but all the other commercial that exists right now is dealing with it. So I don't see why we wouldn't allow this to move forward.
I motion that we provisionally accept it.
did we have hey, Dick, did you withdraw that motion?
I was thinking to, yeah, I'm really torn on this one, where to go. Talked to the landowner and I've talked to people, and it's, if we just take the top portion like they've requested, it does make sense to make that a clear line, but let the landowner decide on what he's gonna do. And Eric, you wanna make the motion? I'll second it. Let's vote on it.
Well, no, so Dick, either made the motion and Eric seconded it. If you withdrew it, Eric just made the motion and I will second it. And then we can go from there.
Okay,
However,
go ahead.
Okay,
That
so
makes
I will
sense.
get the provisional decision that we move forward with this.
All right. So let me get this straight. You yeah, I know. You withdrew your original motion, right, Dick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then consequently, Eric Shears went away. Ed, you just made a new motion to provisionally accept this change.
Eric made the
Eric made
motion.
it. Okay, and you seconded it. Okay. See, that's why I said I want to get it straight. Okay. All right. Any more discussion on this one?
Hope not.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay, that's 3. And those against? And that's 2. So we're sort of in splitsies here with that. So we'll, again, just provisionally, that's where we are right now. Hey, Dick, mute your mic when we're getting some feedback. When
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay, cool. All right, Linda?
Okay, so we're down to our last property discussion for today, and that is C20520200028 Long Meadow Farm LLC. The request is I-1 to C2. This is also known as the Beatty property. The property is situated south of Bennett Road and off of Progress Way and north of Maryland 26 and east of Maryland 32 Sykesville Road. So here's an aerial image. The request that came in is different than the future land use designation as articulated in the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. So the property was actually made smaller in its boundaries from 40 acres to 30 acres. And I apologize, I thought I had a more updated map. The applicant also shifted this boundary down and had it more in line with the northern portion being along Progress Way and the southern portion coming closer to Georgetown. So I apologize for that. I thought I had the correct imagery in here. It was a slight change from what you're seeing on your screen, but it is correct on the zoning map that is posted on the county website, which will be the official map once you go to adopt any of the changes that will be adopted. So both staff and Planning Commission gave this a favorable recommendation for C2. Planning Commission gave it a favorable recommendation with this revised boundary that was submitted as we went through the process. So this plan is consistent with the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. The future land use designation as expressed in the plan, its situation within the Freedom designated growth area, its proximity to Maryland 32 and 26. And there is water and sewer, actually even lines that run through the property, making this an ideal candidate for commercial medium zoning. However, there have been many comments from the community in opposition to this request. This has probably been one of our more vocal properties as far as commenters go. Just wanted to make you aware again of that. We've received both oral and written comments regarding this change. And also there is a parallel process moving forward currently that you all will be forwarded to you shortly for the residential portion that is on the balance of the property. So again, the R20,000 then, whatever is in that C2 zone will become R20,000, or the petition is to be R20,000 zone.
Okay, so there has been, as we all know, a lot of discussion. And we got to get this one right. I really believe that because there is very few properties like this left, especially down in South Carroll. There is no surrounding C2 property for what is being requested. There is industrial on the south side of Bennett, and it's been there. Mohawk's been there for a long, long time. So first, my recommendation is we do not move forward with a C2, provisional C2 decision. We leave it as is. But also, my recommendation is that we make a final decision and determination that it is going to be tied to the residential piece. It is one piece of property. And again, we got to get it right. I do believe it's a great opportunity for a PUD of some sort, a planned development. And if we do one without the other, I think we're very short-sighted. I've been participating with the FDCA, with the Freedom District Group, and Linda and Mary. I really applaud them for also participating as well. It's a tough one, but there's very few pieces of property like this left. So again, my motion is to not favor change at this time. And if any changes to be made at a later time, that's tied in with the residential decisions we're going to make for the Beatty property.
With that, this property, I think the property owners even have been perhaps changed their mind on what they want to do with some of this. Talking to a lot of people in that area and the property owners, I haven't talked to them recently, but I think, this has to be correct. I think we really have issues with infrastructure at Route 32 exiting out here. This has to be done correct. And this has been a topic of controversy since I can remember here. So I'm going to second your motion.
Hey, Linda, what's allowed on the I-1?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is allowed in I-1? What's currently zoned?
So I-1 is limited on the amount of uses as far as more of the commercial retail being allowed. You can have a hotel or motel, a contractor's office, a facility for dispensing medical cannabis. You can have a professional business or office, or an office or industrial park, an indoor rec facility, building or landscaping, supply company, butcher shop, as well as rental of vehicles and storage of goods. There's no housing allowed in the I. A trade school or professional training center is allowed. The artisan type of manufacturing, and then conditional uses are the concrete mixing plants, concrete ceramic products manufacturing, asphalt recycling. So, it's in between those commercial and heavier industrial type of uses. So some of the more heavy uses are a food processing plant, indoor processing of medical cannabis, light manufacturing is permitted.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Linda, you can stop. That's enough. That's enough. I heard it. Yep. Good. But which is why I'm kind of confused. We've heard a lot of against this. So people in the neighborhood would rather have light manufacturing, asphalt, or a concrete plant in there rather than commercial with all the homes that, we haven't done the area directly around that yet. And like Ed said, it is connected. Let's face it, it is, but that's probably going to be residential there. I don't know if I'd rather have a concrete plant closer to me or a store. I'm pretty sure I'd rather have a store. I don't, that's why I don't understand the opposition.
Yeah, no, I understand. Everything to the west of it, if you look at Progress, that's all Merit properties that tie into it. And it would conform to that. You're right, it could go to the extreme to a much heavier I-1 situation, but more probability is it would conform to what's west of what will be Georgetown, because Georgetown will extend from 26 up to Progress. That is in the plans. And there'll be a circle, Georgetown and London Town is the intent. Right, Linda? Is that correct? Georgetown, London Town circle?
So yes and no. So the county did put in the CIP for just the circle portion of Georgetown at London Town. However, any roadway construction would be have to be done by the developer of the properties that we're discussing.
The further Georgetown to Progress.
Sure.
It's just the I know what you're saying, and that's where the planning commission was coming to as well, saying why would they want I as opposed to a much lesser, commercial. Talking to the community, they're looking at they want to conform to what's already there because that's I think what they're used to. They want to develop the residential into medium residential surrounding it, but they want it to all kind of be together, and that's where we really got to look at. Changing it right now by itself is not, I don't believe, a good idea whatsoever.
I think the property owners, given the opportunity, if it's not changed here now, I think it was alluded to, they may want to go residential in the future here. So I think we have to not jump the gun on this one. And believe me, this is one of the last parcels there, and it has to be done correctly. I do agree with, and we don't have the infrastructure for it. With the roads, we don't really have the schools right there for it either at the present time. I think all the elementary schools are overcrowded right in that area. So no matter what we do, it's going to be an issue, but I think we have to give it a little bit of time and let them come back and request it. They can come back anytime and request individually.
Dick, one thing though is what you're looking at on the screen is the future land use. If you go back to the existing use, probably one slide or so, Linda.
I don't have.
Okay, that's right. That whole surrounding area around that parcel is currently zoned industrial, and industrial I-1, the entire surrounding area. What they want to do is take the 30 acres in that blue box, used to be 40, 30, make it industrial, and then the surrounding area that is zoned right now industrial, change that to residential medium. So currently it's not residential, but it will be, and that's the vision of the Beatty property. So, yeah. So yeah. Go ahead, Dennis. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Just hard to, and I understand that's a vision, and I have heard that as well. But it's just hard to believe that people would move in on property right around there when it's zoned I-1 and all the different things you could put in there. Do you really want to move next to a couple of and it may, it might not be the worst case scenario, but it might. And until it gets developed, you don't know what's in there. So I guess they're expecting that people move in around that surrounding area there if that gets rezoned to the commercial, medium, or whatever, not commercial, residential. People are going to move in next door to some of those things that could possibly be put on it. It'd be more palatable, I think, if it was commercial. But it's not my area. I'm going to try to file Ed on this one. It's hard for me to say that, but I am going to try to file Ed on this one because he's dealing with that area much more than I am. He has much more, his fingers on the pulse down here more than I am. It's counterintuitive as to why you would want to keep it there for the things that you can put in there.
Yeah, so it's either we leave it as is with an unfavorable, preliminary, or we table it and do not make a decision on the rezoning of this piece of property until we make a determination on the rezoning of the entire Beatty property. That would be more favorable. I mean, that's where I really love to go. If we can do that, where we're then taking the entire Beatty property and looking at its residential, commercial / industrial as a whole, I think we'll have a much better product and be much better for the county and South Carroll. So if we do that, so I can withdraw my original, and that would be my motion. So.
Excuse me, commissioners, before we move forward on that, I will say I would want to talk with our county attorney on that option, because right now we're in a comprehensive process. So I would need to figure out how we could do both pieces comprehensively, because that's where we are now with this particular process. I just want to be careful with that because I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, that's what I'd like to do. So, Roberta?
I was just gonna say, we'll certainly check it out, but since unless the commissioners change their mind and don't want to go forward with a comprehensive on the residential, you just delay this until that conversation, I would think. But we'll check with Tim.
I must say that I'm in agreement with Commissioner Frazier. It's a bit confusing to me how the residents around there don't want this to go commercial, but they'd rather have an industrial. But also, isn't the intent of this property developer to put some sort of 55 plus housing in there? That's why they want the C2 zoning. And if so, I am in support of that, because 1 of every 3 citizens of this county is going to be above 60 within 10 years. And we are going to be in a short supply of housing for our senior citizens. And this fits into that long-term plan we have. And if we can't get that, I'd be in favor of keeping that whole area industrial, because we are in short supply of industrial land. But then again, I think, why would the residents around there want industrial property there instead of a senior housing? So I'm a bit confused, but ultimately I have to be submissive to what Commissioner Rothstein supports in that area, because it is his district and he's going to get the brunt of whatever happens when it comes down the pike. So whatever Ed wants on this, I'm going to have to follow, but I am confused on what those citizens want down there.
Okay, well, I'd rather you not be submissive, and it's definitely not whatever I want, because it really is. It is good for South Carroll, good for Eldersburg, but it's really what's good for Carroll County. I do believe waiting and doing it together with the entire Beatty property, both residential and a determination on commercial industrial at that point, is what is in our best interest, because it should be a well thought out planned development. There was discussion of a 55 and over complex. It didn't go much further than just in discussion. So I don't know. And that was from the legal side of it, not from any developer at this point. So yeah, so I stand by, I think that's what we should be doing at this point. And yeah, I think I'm just determined. I want to get this right. I want to get this piece of property right.
So my only question, I'm going to leave this up. I think we're getting to a conclusion here, but everything on either side of Progress off of 32 is already I-1. So I haven't heard what's going on there. If somebody all of a sudden wants to do something there, are the citizens down there gonna come roaring in with that too? Or I'm just curious, because this piece would connect to all the rest of the I-1 in there. So what?
Correct. And that's why leaving it as I-1 was the initial recommendation
Okay.
from me, because that's all Merritt property. They're well established. You got Mohawk up south of Benny. I mean, Roberta knows this area very well. And you're right. It ties directly into what already exists as industrial, and there's no intent of that changing. Roberta?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I believe, and Linda can correct me if I'm wrong, that all of that industrial property that is pink on this particular map is developed. I don't think there are any parcels that are undeveloped there. And that's not part of the commercial industrial rezoning, comprehensive rezoning.
Yeah, you got the bakery off of London.
For the bakery, and that's been developed since, I think, this aerial imagery. So everything is fully developed and now being redeveloped along the London Town portion.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I rarely go down into that area of Progress. I'm typically on 32 or on London Town or Georgetown, so I'm not really familiar with what's back there. So I'm good with whatever you want to do with this one, Ed, to make sure that we do this right. I agree. I'm a little bit puzzled that folks down there, because if you do the math, there are 2 to 3 cars per household. So if you're going to do all residential in there, man, you're adding a lot of cars to Eldersburg instead of like instead of a company or something. So I guess that's okay. I don't know. Here I go with my safety thing again, because you put all that in residential, you are going to throw hundreds, if not thousands of vehicles onto roads down there.
And kids on pedal bikes. I would like to say, Commissioner Rothstein, don't steer me wrong on this, because if you do, I'm going to hear from Delegate Krebs on it.
That doesn't bother me whatsoever, and she can call you anytime. Yeah, I think, again, I think getting it right, let's look at the rezoning of this piece of property in conjunction with the decisions we make on the rest of the Beatty property.
Okay, I'm good with that. If it all goes residential, it probably won't be us, but another board is going to hear then about all the vehicles that are down there, and you can't get out. You can't. It's kind of a catch-22 here, ladies and gentlemen.
And school capacity.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, Ed's already been working on that, especially with Freedom Elementary.
Right.
Which begs the argument of, if you put, 4 bakeries in here instead of 110 houses, isn't that, I don't know. I guess I'm looking at it wrong. I'm not sure.
I think you're looking at it right, and you're right. Carrolltown and Freedom are big concerns, elementary schools. The road network off of Liberty with Georgetown expansion or extension is a piece of this. I mean, there's a lot of pieces towards this. We limited it from the 40 acres to 30 acres that they want to change from industrial to commercial. My recommendation is keeping it. And the rest of that area, I think it's like 110 acres. How large is the request, Linda, for residential?
I don't have it in front of me. Total property is 117.
Yeah.
So minus
117. So I think it's like 90 acres or 80 acres. They're looking at residential.
Okay, I'm good with your recommendation, Ed. When you talk about 117 acres of residential and you do the math that planners do of 2 to 3 vehicles per household and how many children per household, good grief. I think I'd rather have Schmidt Factory come in and make bread there with 30 employees. I don't know.
This is the issue we're going to have throughout the county, though, and the roads and our lack of infrastructure to handle them, as no matter what we do in the growth area and as we start growing. And we haven't seen it right now with the schools, but we'll be back. And this is, I think, one thing we have to keep in the back of our mind as we go through this everywhere here in comprehensive rezoning.
Yeah, we'll be having this conversation with the Zabel property. The tough part about what we're doing is we're calling it comprehensive and we're trying to be very comprehensive. But the challenge is when we're looking at one piece of property and its effects on another piece and then another piece, and we do it sequentially, it becomes just very difficult. I mean, I think we're doing very well, but it does add up. That's for darn sure, especially when it comes to schools and safety.
Okay, I think we've probably debated this one enough. We didn't vote on that yet. So Ed, remind us again of what your recommendation was. Leave it the way it is, right? Until further.
Correct. That we make a final determination in conjunction with the rest of the Beatty property as it comes to us.
Okay. Did you second that, Dick? Yeah, okay. All right. All those in favor? That seems to be unanimous at this point. Okay. Linda?
So the next work session will be on December 22nd from 1 to 3 p.m. So a week from today. I guess my one question for direction from the commissioners is, do you want to hear the properties from last week and then pick up in January? We do have the January 5th, hold on your calendar, and the 12th to go back to the properties that still have questions. And we can do that in January. Or do you want us to lead off with the two properties that you had additional questions regarding today?
How many properties do we have left to look over?
About 10 more.
Well, why, it'd just be my suggestion then. Let's try to get the two properties we have questions on today, get those questions answered, start with those two and try to hit the next 10. Because we can get all this wrapped up before Christmas for a preliminary vote. I think that would be, very, very good.
Agreed. I agree with that. Okay. All right. Anything else, Linda?
No, that's all I have for you all today.
Okay. Anything else that anybody has? Miscellaneous here?
Motion to
Yeah,
adjourn.
enjoy the snow.
Yeah, so there's that. Hey, they'll be doing a press release, I'm sure, but as a result of the storm, there will be no testing at the Shipley Arena on Thursday. And I'm sure there'll be more decisions that are going to be made in reference to the pending 10 to 14 inches that were expected in this region. Actually, 6 to 10 down in Eldersburg, but 10 to 14 from Westminster North. So, all right, got a motion and second to adjourn. Everybody stay safe. All those in favor? All right, thank you, Linda and staff, and we'll see everybody possibly on Thursday. Take care.